Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this new Microphones album, The Microphones in 2020. The Microphones are a legendary indie rock band fronted by one of my favorite songwriters ever, Mr. Phil Elverum, who early on in their career with albums like It Was Hot, We Stayed in the Water absolutely captivated me with a sound that I had never heard before. Between noisy, sort of lo-fi, crushing highs and whisper, quiet lows and incredible drones, the Microphones were blending these styles that you really didn't hear at the time. 2001's The Glow Part 2 is an album that I honestly don't want to go too far into, but I will say this. It is an incredible experience, and honestly, it's one that you need to hear firsthand. Even their 2003 Mount Eerie project, which Phil would go on to use as his name for the next 19 years or however long it's been, honestly, was a pretty decent project as well, but it did show the Microphones working with a much more pensive, patience-testing sound. Now, it is 2020. Phil Elverum has been very busy, though, recording under the Mount Eerie name, delivering classics like A Crow Looked at Me, which are so crushing and devastating. He's also done some more experimental stuff, too, like the days where he was pushing out Wind's Poem and Ocean's Roar and stuff like that. And seemingly out of nowhere has revived the Microphones name for one long, continuous track. It is 45 minutes. It's the first Microphone stuff we've gotten since 2003. Let's chat about it. From the intro of this very long track, I'm actually kind of surprised on how straightforward it sounds. It's very breezy and very folky. And it's especially interesting when you realize the last time we heard from the Microphones, he was literally testing just how noisy and how patience testing the band could get. This is very classy, very light on the ear sounding, but it does remain just so meditative as much as Phil's work is, and honestly, it's really easy to get caught up in. Now, I will say this. The fact that this isn't on streaming services has made this review a little bit more. I honestly wanted to get this out a little bit earlier today, but it took a little bit more time putting this together. However, I will say this. The slideshow that Phil has put together for the YouTube page that you could find this track or album or whatever you want to call it actually makes it so much more intense. It is unbelievably powerful and actually tells an amazing story. When Phil eventually does pop in with some lyrics, I personally think he sounds really refreshed. All I remember about last year's Lost Wisdom Part 2 was it being okay overall, but at times I was also worried that Phil was phoning it in a little bit, getting a little bit too cheesy. Not to mention, to me, it just sounded like he was trying way too hard. But on here, honestly, I'm shocked at just how much this sounds like the guy that I really identified with many years ago. It's very poetic, as many Microphones lyrics are, but it's also very puzzling, worth a good chat about. Also, there are a lot of themes that have popped up in the Microphones music before, like loneliness and intense themes of nature. Now, as this track progresses around the 15-minute mark, I would say things get a little bit more brooding, a little bit more darker. Nothing is ever really as noisy as stuff like we get on The Glow Part 2 or anything like that, but there is this sense that something is bubbling underneath, which I think makes this a pretty interesting listen. So much so that eventually we do get a heavier sound. We get some heavier instrumentals, but with that comes a really interesting lyrical shift. We get a lot more themes of art here, as well as Phil's thoughts on the creation of art and the artistic process. It's actually really interesting, and Phil goes very deep into the early days of the Microphones here, and it's actually pretty fascinating. If you're a Microphones fan of any sort, or just a Phil Elverum fan, this is gold. It's almost like a little mini documentary, but one directed, written by, and produced by Phil Elverum himself. Now, Phil has changed quite a bit since the last Microphones project in 2003. That goes without saying. But one thing that hasn't changed is the subtleness. Some of the subtle details on this one long massive track will make any fan of the Microphones, old or new, really giddy. I mean, these are great. Around the halfway mark, we get some noisier moments as well, which is kind of par for the course with Microphones tunes. We get some nice drones, some harsh noise as well, but honestly, I would say that there's nothing here that really isn't accessible. I will say this though as a warning, if you're not a Microphones fan at heart, honestly, I don't think that this is the place to start. While I personally am genuinely loving this as a work of art, honestly, I don't think a 45-minute long track is right for anybody to start with any music or any genre or any artist. But for me, in 2020, and being such a huge fan, this is kind of everything I could have asked for. Fluid, it's very formless, it doesn't seem to have a real shape or set of rules. There are plenty of moments here that are breezy and light on the ears and introspective, but there are also just as many here that need discussion, need to be analyzed. There's tons of imagery, tons of character, and it is incredibly dense. Not only that, there are a couple here and there sprinkled in some tasteful callbacks to earlier Microphones work, just enough to put a smile on my face in this very sort of dismal, very drony experience. It's a tale of artistic highs and absolutely crushing lows, but can't we say that about almost every Phil Elverum project? So, like I said, for me, this is wonderful and really, really enjoyable. It's just something that I've been waiting a long time for, and I'm not disappointed by at all. However, like I said, my only real downside to this is I don't think you're going to enjoy this as much as me if you're not a Microphones fan, or if you've been looking to get into the Microphones. This is not the place to start. There's certainly a lot more things you should be listening to before this, but that's just me. I'm feeling a decent 8 on this album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.